Just after 6 in the morning on a trench town veranda in Kingston, a pair of hands tightens the strings of a battered acoustic guitar until the low note finally holds. A few streets over, a transistor radio balances on a windowsill, catching the first broadcast of the day. Down another lane, before the corner has woken, a yard builder threads speaker wire into an amplifier, taping the join. Past the last houses, the harbour lies grey under early light. The brochure sells beaches, rum, and one famous smile. Underneath that image sits a country of roughly 2.8 to 2.9 million people, working each day on an island smaller than the state of Connecticut, independent since 1962. Jamaica's beauty is not the point. The point is how one small island, dug up and carried off by others for 4 centuries, learned to export the one thing no one could mine out of it: its sound. The chain runs from street corner to Harbour Road, from red dirt to dub plate, from the great house above the reggae to Sunday's pot, carrying the yard into Monday. The West Kingston yard, where Bob Marley learned 3 chords before he learned the road, the day starts low and unhurried. The light comes up grey over zinc fences, a rooster answers a radio, and fingers work along the neck of a guitar until one string finally holds its note. The neighbourhood grew from government yards laid down in the 1930s and after the war. Out of those cramped blocks came ska, then rocksteady, then reggae, a music the United Nations added to its list of the world's intangible cultural heritage in 2018. Marley is the name the world knows, but the streets made many others too. Nothing about the street announces any of this. There is only the morning, the chord held and released, and the sense of a poor corner that once taught the world how to keep time. By afternoon, the quiet chord has an answer, and it is loud. On a corner not far off, a speaker stack rises plywood box by box until it stands taller than the man building it, and the ritual that made this island audible begins to assemble. Sound system culture took shape in Kingston in the late 1940s and 1950s, when amplifiers and record crates turned corners into dance halls. The figure at the center is the selector, the one who chooses each record and reads the crowd, and the bed he runs beneath the voices is the rhythm, the recycled instrumental track the dancers ride on the bass. The builder threads the last of the speaker wire into the amplifier, tapes the join, and tests the low end with a thumb pressed against the cone until the whole box breathes. When 2 stacks meet, the contest is called a clash, and the crowd decides who has won. That bass line does not stay on the corner. It rolls off the concrete and downhill toward the water, where Kingston opens onto one of the largest natural harbours in the world. A deep, sheltered basin that made the city a port long before it made it a capital. By mid-morning, the quays are working, cranes swinging containers off the decks, the city stacked in tiers against the hills behind it, and roughly 1.2 million people across the metropolitan area move through their day. The harbour matters to the sound because a habit built on a street corner needs somewhere to travel. This water is why a rhythm pressed in a Kingston yard could be heard weeks later in London, Toronto, and New York. The corner made the sound. The harbour gave it a route out. One road runs inland from the docks and carries the same restless motion. Spanish Town Road stretches west toward the old colonial capital, Villa de la Vega, the island's seat of government until 1872. Along its length, the street works without pause. Minibuses nosing through traffic, hand carts stacked with produce, barbers and bakeries and hardware stores under a tangle of wire and washing strung overhead. It is less a landmark than a vein, the corridor through which goods and workers and errands circulate between the harbour and the interior. And the road carried more than cargo. Down these same lanes, across 4 centuries, came people pulled from 3 continents. And out of that mixing, some of it forced and some of it chosen, the island would make a single nation and a single tongue. The mixing had a point of entry, and it sits on a low spit of sand at the mouth of the harbour. Port Royal reaches out where the water meets the open sea, its old fort walls low against the sky, a handful of fishing skiffs riding the shallows. For a few decades in the 17th century, this was the busiest port in the Caribbean, the arrival gate through which ships and cargo and captive labour passed into the island. Then, in 1692, an earthquake dropped much of the town into the harbour in a single afternoon. What remains is quiet now, a fishing village at the end of a road. But every current of people that would become the Jamaican nation first came ashore somewhere along this water. Africans carried in chains, Europeans chasing sugar money, and others still to come later. Back up the harbour, where the container quays give way to a market edge and crates of produce move hand to hand through the foot traffic, the rest of the mixture arrived to work. From the 1850s came Chinese migrants, many of them Hakka, a southern Chinese subgroup, who moved into small retail until the shop counter became their island institution. Roughly 36,000 indentured labourers came from India under contract, many bound for cane fields the enslaved had left only a decade before. Each group came for the reason the harbour existed at all, labour and trade, and each stayed, married in, and folded its language and its cooking and its faith into a population already African and European. The mixing was not a policy handed down from above, it was a workforce, assembled a shipload at a time. Out along Spanish Town Road, the proof of it still stands behind steel shutters. The small grocery on the corner, often Chinese-founded and run by the same family for 3 generations, became so ordinary a fixture that the island stopped noticing it. The place the neighbourhood buys its bread and its saltfish and its Sunday flour. When Jamaica took its independence in 1962, it chose 4 words for the coat of arms. Out of many, one people. And the corner shop is where that motto stops being a slogan and becomes a transaction repeated 10,000 times a day. The shared tongue found its champion too. Louise Bennett Coverley, known as Miss Lou, put the island's Creole speech into print and onto radio, insisting it was a language and not a mistake until her death in 2006. From the shop counter, it is a short walk to the stove. And it is at the stove that the whole history sits down to eat. In a home kitchen no larger than a pantry, the cook flakes the salt from a piece of cured cod, folds flour and water into dumplings and drops them into the pot, while rice and peas ticks over a low flame in the corner. The plate that comes off this stove is the nation in miniature. The African one-pot method, the Indian curry and the folded flatbread, the Chinese soy and rice, the Scottish habit of salting fish to survive a long crossing, all of it long since stopped being foreign and simply called Jamaican. Over the pot, the family speaks the language the mixing made, patois, the Creole grammar built in the cane field out of English words and African structure, the sentence that binds shopkeeper and cane cutter and drummer into one people. The table is set, but a table has to be paid for, and the island, with little else to sell, would have to dig its payment out of the ground. By day, the island shows its other color, and it is red. In the interior, where the green cover is stripped back, an open pit steps down into ground the shade of rust, and the machinery working the floor looks small against the scale of the cut. Jamaica began mining and exporting bauxite in 1952, and soon stood among the world's leading exporters of the ore, the red rock refined into alumina and then aluminium. The haul roads run ochre. The dust they lift settles downwind on leaves and laundry, and the zinc roofs of houses miles from the pit, a fine red film that marks everything living beside the industry. That weight leaves as fast as it is dug. Down at the harbour, the red ore is poured by the ton into bulk carriers riding low in the water, and it goes cheaply, priced in markets the island does not set, to come back one day as finished metal no one here can buy at cost. For more than 70 years, this has been the arithmetic of the ground. Enormous tonnage out, a fraction of the final worth returned. The bauxite built roads and paid wages, but the aluminium was made somewhere else, and the island kept the hole in the hillside. Higher up, the same island grows something the world pays dearly for. On the slopes of the Blue Mountains, which climb to 2,256 meters, the coffee smallholders work their rows of dark shrubs entirely by hand. One grower's hands move down a branch at first light, taking only the ripe red cherries into a tin hung at the waist and leaving the green fruit for a later pass, because the crop does not ripen all at once. The beans off these slopes sell as some of the most expensive coffee on earth, much of it shipped to Japan. Yet the reward at the end of the labor is plain. The fruit dried and hulled and roasted and poured black into a mug on a plank table, the steam lifting into the cool air while the valley below is still grey. Two things, then, come from the one ground. The red ore hauled off by the shipload for pennies of its final value, and the bean carried down the mountain and sold by the pound. And the question underneath the whole working day is the oldest one the island knows. It is not what the ground holds. It is which of the things dug up here actually pays, and who is standing there to collect when it does. There is a third thing this ground yields, and it is cut only after dark. When the red dirt day fades and the pit falls silent, a light comes on in a small room where the island presses its most valuable record, one copy at a time. A dub plate is an exclusive acetate, a single, unrepeatable cut of a track voiced for one sound system and owned by no other. And a selector will pay real money for a version no rival stack on the corner can answer. Here the arithmetic turns over. The ore goes out cheap and nameless by the 1,000 tons. The dub plate stays rare and named, a few grams of lacquer worth more to the right buyer than a truckload of red rock. The one is weighed by the ton and forgotten before the ship clears the harbour. The other is weighed by the names scratched into the runout and kept for years. The day belongs to the earth. The night is where the ground turns to gold. The coast runs west and the land lifts, and on a rise above the road, where the cane once ran down to the sea, a great house still stands. Rose Hall was built in the 1770s, a planter's mansion of cut stone and tall windows, set deliberately on high ground so the man who owned the estate could look down over the fields and the people working them. It has been restored now, its floors polished, its rooms hung with portraits, and buses climb the hill each day to see it. From its upper windows, the view runs down over the same ground where, most evenings, a sound system will later stack its speakers and play. The house sits above the music now, exactly as it once sat above the labour, and to read the one honestly is to read the other. The music was born beside this. Jamaica was, for the better part of 2 centuries, one of the most profitable sugar colonies in the world, and the profit was pulled out of human beings. More than 1 million Africans were carried to the island in chains across the era of the trade, worked on estates like this one, and buried in ground that kept no headstones. A single plantation of this size ran on the labour of 200 or 300 enslaved people, cutting cane by hand in the heat, feeding it through the rollers of the mill, boiling the juice down through the night in coppers that scalded and maimed. The wealth that raised these tall windows was made from exactly that, and the island has never been allowed to forget it, because the island is descended from the people who did the work. At Christmas in 1831, in the country around this same stretch of coast near Montego Bay, an enslaved Baptist deacon named Samuel Sharp called for a general strike. The strike turned into the largest slave rebellion in the island's history. Estates and great houses burned across the west. The colonial answer was ferocious. The rising was put down within weeks, and in the months that followed, hundreds of the enslaved were tried and executed. Sharp himself hanged in the public square of Montego Bay. He was near 31 when they killed him. But the scale of the rebellion and the brutality of the reprisal reached London, and within 2 years, Parliament passed the act that began the end of slavery across the empire. Sam Sharp is a national hero of Jamaica now, his face on the $50 note. The great house he rose against is a ticketed attraction. That is the weight the reggae carries without ever naming it. Up at the house, the tour leans on a ghost story, while the real dead go unmentioned in the brochure. Down the hill, in a 2-room house within sight of the estate wall, a cook sets a blackened pot on a single burner, and the cut stone her kitchen leans against was shaped by people who were owned. The distance between those 2 rooms is the whole history of the island, measured in a few hundred meters of hillside. The plantation took almost everything it could reach: the labor, the language, the names people were born with. What it could never quite take was the pot on the fire and the people who gathered around it. And by the end of the week, that gathering becomes the whole point of the week. Below the great house, in 100 small yards, Sunday is coming. On Sunday, the week slows to the pace of a single pot. Before 9 in the morning, in a kitchen no larger than a bedroom, oxtail browns in a heavy iron pot, turned with a long spoon until the sugar catches and the meat takes colour. Then left to braise low for 3 or 4 hours until the tough cut gives way and the gravy thickens on its own. On the next burner, the rice and peas comes together. Kidney beans simmered until they give, coconut milk, a sprig of thyme, and a whole Scotch bonnet pepper left to sit in the pot without breaking, so the heat perfumes the rice but never burns it. A pot of soup may be going on a third flame, pumpkin and yam and a spinner dumpling rolled between 2 palms. Nothing here is hurried. The Sunday meal is measured in hours, not minutes, and the whole house keeps time by the smell moving from room to room. By early afternoon, the yard fills. 3 generations gather around one table or spread out onto the shade of the concrete step, plates loaded high, and the meal does what it has always done and holds the family in one place for the length of an afternoon. Everything the island is runs through this plate. The African one-pot method, the slow braise and the pepper heat, the rice and the beans carried here by so many different hands across 4 centuries, resolved now into a single Sunday dinner that no one at the table thinks to call anything but home. The children eat first, the pot is scraped, and somebody is already talking about next Sunday. Off in the yard, the smoke starts. Jerk, meat rubbed with pepper and pimento and laid over a low fire of green pimento wood, traces back to the Maroons, the escaped and freed people who cooked this way in the hills, and the method has never left the island's Sunday. The pit smokes slowly through the afternoon. The smell carries over the fences the same way the music soon will. It is a taste that began as a way to survive out of sight, and it comes to the table now as celebration. And then, as the light goes, the sound comes back. The speaker stack that stood taller than a man on the corner at dawn is wired up again at the edge of the yard. The selector lowers a needle onto a worn record, and the bass line rolls out over the emptied plates and the last of the smoke and the low, tired talk. Neighbours drift in over the fence line, drawn by the bass the way they were drawn by the smoke an hour before. This is where the chain closes on itself. The rhythm that was built on a street corner, carried out through the harbour and cut into a dub plate after dark, comes home at the end of the week to the exact ground it started from. A yard, a family, a Sunday evening, one bass note held long in the chest. By Monday, the pot has become a bowl of leftovers warming on the stove, and the stack is broken back down into its plywood boxes. But the bass line outlasts the weekend. It carries out of the yard and into the working week, into the minibuses nosing along Spanish Town Road and the radios balanced on the windowsills, into the same hands that will reach for the battered guitar again just after 6 the next morning. Just after 6 the next morning, on the same Trenchtown veranda, pale light gathers along the zinc fences and a radio murmurs low from the sill. The guitarist reaches again for the worn instrument, turns the peg once, and this time the low note holds on the first try. The speaker boxes stand broken down in the corner, waiting for Friday. Out past Port Royal, a bulk carrier rides low with red ore. Somewhere beyond that water, Someone sets a Kingston record down. The old route still runs. The cargo now is sound. Roughly 2.8 million people. 4 centuries of extraction, mixing, and refusal. One bass note held in the chest. And another street beyond the harbour is already listening for what this small island sends next.